So we are assembling again. Thank everybody for being here. All the members of the CRB, all the members of the MARTA Brookhaven City Center Partners Development Team, all the public that's here, and MARTA representatives. There was an agenda that was sent out to all of y'all. Did y'all get that agenda that files? I think it was sent this morning. So basically, we're gonna have an interactive discussion, but I'm gonna turn it over to Art to go through a presentation, recap some of the things we talked about last time. But this time, hopefully, we'll have a lot more interaction in every one of these categories that we outlined on the agenda. I'm gonna pass around the sign-in sheet. Here is the agenda, if anybody needs it. I'm going to pass around this sign-in sheet. Just please sign in, both CRB members. And actually, why don't we go ahead, just so that people know who everybody is, quick introduction, who you are, and what area you represent if you're on the CRB. Bates Madison, Mayor Pro Tem, City of Brookhaven.
Jack Hunter, Brookhaven Field Civic Association.
Denise Starling, District 1.
Joe Floody, District 3.
Giles Stevens, Brookhaven Heights Community Association.
Michael Roberts, Brookhaven Beach Street Community Alliance.
Kathy Chrisman, Ashford Park.
Matt Simmons, attorney, District 3.
Karen McBrayer, District 1.
Bob Sorrentino, District 2.
Linda Martin, Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Art Lominick, loyal urban developer. Okay.
I'll leave it just in
Thanks
your
for
hands.
reconvening. So here's from last week. What we did was I really appreciate everybody doing their written comments. That was really helpful. Bates fed it to us, and we talked through it with our team. So tonight's supposed to be a lot more interactive, and we're hopefully going to be drilling down more on everything but traffic, and then traffic's at the end. But we definitely have some other things to talk about in traffic too. And but to continue to get any insights y'all have now that you've had a chance to kind of absorb the plan. So we are going to, what we're going to do, we've actually brought back some new materials and some recaps of stuff based on the questions you guys asked. And then instead of doing a presentation, it's just going to be Q&A all the way through. And we've got an hour and a half, right?
Correct. By 7, I have to go. Y'all can stick around, but that's the end time for us.
Okay. All right, cool. So from that agenda, one of the comments that was made was that really didn't understand what some of the feedback was from the district meetings. We did one full community meeting at City Hall that kicked us off. We did all four districts, so 5 outreaches. From there, MARTA did a survey that I'm going to let Debbie talk through, because you guys really want to better understand how the community's been responding, what they did. So she was kind enough to assimilate that data. So I'm going to let her do that first, and then we can jump into the rest.
All right. So I'm going to sit here. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Art, and good evening. I'm Debbie Frank. I'm with MARTA, and as Art said, I'm going to give an overview of the results from the survey that we administered online over a 3-week period from April 21st to May 12th. And the purpose of the survey was to pretty much just provide us with another option for community feedback on the initial development concept that was presented May 2015 about the redevelopment of the surface parking around the MARTA station. The survey responses, along with the community feedback that Art mentioned and just feedback that we've received from you guys, have helped inform the revised development proposal that you'll see a little bit later. And I do want to say that we will be posting the survey results on our website. So if we go through this too quickly, you'll have an opportunity to review it on our website. And with that, I think we're ready to get started. There were 565 individuals that responded to our survey, which we were really, really pleased about. And with the first 3 questions here, we really just wanted to get a sense of who were actually responding to our survey. We wanted to know where they live, their ages, and if they use MARTA. And we found that 88% of the people who responded to the survey actually lived in the city of Brookhaven. The age range, 74% were, the ages of 74% of the respondents was under 45, with 42% in that age group of 35 and 44. So we had a kind of a young group of people that were actually responding to the survey. We were, in the third question, we found that individuals traveling to and from the airport used MARTA the most. Only 8% said that they did not use our system, the MARTA or transit in general, but we were pleased to find that 29% said that they used MARTA to travel for entertainment events, to and from the airport, and to and from work. Only 5% that they solely used it to travel to and from work. Our next question, we wanted to know, we asked the respondents to select 3 elements of the development that you would like to see in the community. And based on the responses here, and as well as feedback we were receiving during the community meetings, it was not surprising that a lot of the respondents, over 350, said we want to see a more pedestrian-friendly environment, followed by public open space and green space in the community. And third, rounding out the top 3, was more transportation options. So that included trains, buses, cars, pedestrian, and bicycles. So that kind of speaks to that bike ped plan, I think, that Brookhaven has undergone. This question, number 5, was based upon the initial development concept. So we want to keep that in mind. We asked, based on that initial development concept, please point out to us your top 3 things that are most important to you in this development. And again, we had no surprises here with over 400 people saying open space, green space, topping it out at number 1, followed by neighborhood serving, retail, and restaurants. And rounding out the top 3 was parking. Parking, we heard a lot of different things during our community meeting, so we had to kind of think through that a little bit, because we heard people say, whatever you do with the redevelopment of the MARTA station, don't do away with the long-term parking. It's very convenient for us to just drive to the station, park in long-term, and travel to the airport, which kind of points back to how people are majority using the MARTA station now. Then we also heard, which could really point to the need for ample parking, because the neighboring residential areas said we are impacted by people just parking on our residential streets that don't live in the neighborhood. And it's making it an unsafe environment, very difficult to move around. So parking itself probably covers a few different things there. In the same vein, we wanted to know from the proposed initial development concept plan, what are you most concerned about? And as you can see, increased vehicular traffic topped it out at 54%, followed by density. And in density, we were talking about square footage and the number of residential units. And then third was people saying they had no concern about the development at 11%. The one thing that I found interesting is that we heard a lot about the scale of development here, but it only registered at 1% from the survey respondents in terms of the scale of development, meaning the height. The last 3 questions, we really wanted a yes/no answer, and or to what degree. So we asked, are you supportive of the library being located in the development? We wanted to know how important it is to redevelop the MARTA parking lots. And then, are you supportive of the project as currently proposed? So straight out the top, you can see that overwhelmingly people want to see the library located in the development. Now, question 8, this is not the entire question. We kind of tried to reduce the amount just to get it on the slide, but we preference if traffic congestion and other infrastructure issues that we heard in the community, like stormwater, water pressure, and overcrowded schools were not an issue, how important would it be to redevelop the MARTA parking lots? And you can see here we listed extremely important, important, somewhat important, and not important. 75% thought that there was some level of importance in the redevelopment of the parking lots, and only 24% said no, it's not important. And I think that 24% would represent individuals that don't want to see anything, anytime, regardless of the condition of the larger community with infrastructure. And then number 9, we wanted to know, based on the current proposal, are you supportive of this project? And this is kind of telling. So looking at it straight on, you would say, okay, 50% of the people are in support of it, 50% are not. But we did say based on the currently proposed concept plan. So here, I think you found that maybe that 24% is represented in this 47% that don't want to see anything happen on the parking lots. But you also have individuals who may have said, I would like to see more of a for sale product. And so they check no, because currently, the way it's currently proposed, it may not be meeting those needs. Or I want more open space or more neighborhood serving retail. So there's the possibility with the revisions that have been made with the development concept that we could see some of those no's turning into yeses. And the final question we had was pretty much open-ended. And we wanted to know what outcome would you like to see from this development? And so we had a list of like tons of comments coming in that were really ranging from every end of the spectrum. And so I wanted to just provide this list to you guys. I'm not going to go through everything, but I thought that it was just pretty interesting to see people list like less apartment and density, the sooner the better. We had one comment like, don't do it, kind of thing. And what part of no do you not get? So I just we wanted to point out the concerns that people had addressed, as well as the suggestions that people had in terms of how we should redevelop the property. And that kind of concludes it. I guess we can open it up for questions.
So any questions on that? So we've tried to work with the data from the 4 district meetings with you guys, and in the survey as best we can.
So that was, when did the survey run? What was the date on it?
The date was April 21st through May 12th.
Of this year?
Of this year, a 3-year period. So really after our initial round of community meetings.
Right. But it was using the last year's plan.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
The plan that was shown in the district meetings.
Right.
Did you have any concern about a potential bias with the demographic being so young, or did that reflect the neighborhood?
I think in a way, honestly, to me, it balanced it out, because those are the segment of the groups that will likely want to go online. But if you look at our community meetings, we probably had an older group of people in attendance of those meetings.
How many people answered that didn't live in our area?
I'm sorry now?
How many people answered the survey that didn't live in Brookhaven?
It was 12%. Yeah, 88% lived in the city of Brookhaven.
The percentage of people answering the survey who use MARTA in a variety of ways, how does that compare to the general population's usage?
I have no
So-
idea. We would have to dig in.
So you're looking for, like, as a percentage of
Were these
population
primarily-
in our service area?
Well, yeah, were these of the population, if only 10% use MARTA, but of these survey takers, 40% use MARTA, that would probably be a
Just
significant
specifically
difference.
for the city of Brookhaven. Yeah, we'll look and see if we have that information. We have a research and analysis group at MARTA that may have that, so we can see if we can find it.
All right.
Thank you,
Good.
Debbie.
All
Thank
right.
you. And I think, as you said, it's going to be online. And
Right. We're going to place it on our website.
yeah, get on the website. The connectivity was a common theme too last week in urban planning, and what are we doing to think of this more in context to good quality urbanism and connections into the neighborhoods. And we have stayed pretty focused on site specific in a lot of our presentations. So Nicolia, who is our planner with Cooper Carey, and is going to put a little more color on how we've been looking at this really from the start, from that perspective, and some of the geometry and barriers that this site have that create some complexity to it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take us back 2 years to 2014 when we started to look at the site. And we received the RFP, and there were goals that MARTA had outlined for mixed-use communities, more density, improved parking, a walkable environment. And then there were the LCI goals that had to do do with creating a mixed-use center and really creating a walkable environment. And all of those desires and goals align with what we would like to see happen here. So one of the first things we did was, as a design team, try to figure out what is it that we want to accomplish here. There were three important things that came out. We wanted to improve the connections to the greater Brookhaven and their amenities. We wanted to also create a better walkable pedestrian public realm and environment. And we also wanted to create a village center, a focal point, something that could become a heart space and an identifier for the city of Brookhaven. And so one of our early diagrams really just looked at Peachtree Road and how it is a main thoroughfare through, but it's also a connective spine to a lot of the amenities along in Brookhaven. Oglethorpe University, Town of Brookhaven, City Hall, Brookhaven Park. And one of the questions we had initially is, how do we make connections to these amenities? And also down Dresden to the Brookhaven Village Place area. Again, how do we incorporate connections to all of these? And part of understanding how to connect is understanding the network in which we're working in. And so the white indicates the road system and the road network that's currently existing around the site. And there are two major constraints and barriers to the site that run through it, almost like a river. You have the CSX freight line, so that created a west and an east side, and the MARTA tracks, which are elevated, and we can get right up to it, do some things under it, but it does create some development issues when you start getting into construction of buildings. But also, Peachtree Road, as wide as it is somewhat of a barrier, but not if we can get it more connected. Then you have North Druid and Dresden, and we've had all the traffic discussions, and these are the type of things we were really trying to reconcile as we were moving forward. So one of the first things that we thought about is, how do we make this more connected? Traditionally in planning, we talk about this quarter-mile walking distance, which averages 5 to 10 minutes. But from the MARTA station tunnel entrance, that yellow indicates what is perceived as a 5 to 10 minute walk as an individual moving through the TOD area. And we wanted to figure out, how do we make this more connected? And so with the constraints of the CSX freight line and MARTA, breaking up the blocks and getting them smaller became more of a U and connections almost north-south. And that's what you see, an introduction of a roadway that runs through, an introduction around, connecting back to the existing Fernwood and the existing street grid that's currently there, and then keeping the access points into the site that currently exists along Peachtree and Dresden. The second thing that we wanted to also think about is connections, not just from a vehicular standpoint, but from a multimodal and pedestrian standpoint. And we actually looked at the bike and ped plan. And what you see here, the purple indicates bike lanes, and the dash purple are sharrows, which are bike lanes essentially sharing the same space as vehicles. The blue lines indicate improved pedestrian connections, which would be filling in the gaps with sidewalks and things that are currently happening in Brookhaven. And then the orange is a multi-use path. And so we wanted to ensure that we had connections and incorporated all of this into our design. Next slide.
Nicole,
Yes.
that was the city of Brookhaven.
That's the city of Brookhaven bike and ped diagram.
When was that done?
Last year.
Last year.
Okay.
Yes, it's fairly,
Completed this year,
Okay.
yes, fairly recent.
just a couple months ago.
So one comment in addition. The multi-use paths that Nicole had just mentioned, they are not necessarily separated from the road in the definition that Brookhaven has in their study. For instance, along Peachtree, they have a multi-use path, but essentially is a 12-foot sidewalk along Peachtree, okay? A lot of times when we talk about multi-use path as planners or as bicycle enthusiasts, we're talking about an off-road system that's used for, joggers and rollerbladers and bicyclists and walkers. But in this case, Brookhaven's definition in their study is a multi-use path for Peachtree is a 12-foot sidewalk. Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
And that highlights part of where we're, along Dresden, for example, there is a multi-use path. And around our site, we have 15-foot sidewalks along Dresden, down Apple Valley, of North Druid Hills, and we have 20-foot wide sidewalks along Peachtree. So it's wide enough, as Gary said, to accommodate some, yes.
Does that include the 5-foot planting area between the street and the path? Or does that include
Yes.
So a 15-foot path would be a 10-foot path with a 5-foot offset?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Say that last part one more
A
time.
15-foot path is what they described, would be a 5-foot planting area, lights, trees, what have you, and a 10-foot right of
So
way.
probably the best way to describe it is a 20-foot pedestrian zone
Yes.
in which you have the actual pavement and the street.
And so, when we start thinking about pedestrian connections into the site, we wanted to really connect across the site, east to west, and connecting north to south. So one of those major connections is through the tunnel, but we wanted to keep that over. You know, you can't go over with the CSX freight, but there is an existing tunnel that we envision enhancing, but again, making that connection through the site and then connecting through to Fernwood. And then following the streets within the project, again, making more of a connective place, and then connecting to the future MARTA parking deck, which would be located here in future phases. But then also strengthening and connecting Peachtree to the existing North Druid Hill, or to the proposed North Druid Hills multi-use path, maintaining the Dresden multi-use, and just really incorporating all of the good recommendations that came out of the bike ped plan, and then creating those connections and enhancing the last mile, those connections to the actual MARTA station through bike and pedestrian.
Are you proposing to put all the utilities underground?
On our site,
Yes.
site property, absolutely. Everything will go under.
Yes?
So one of the things that's been talked about a lot in the committee that's not really represented by that is connection across Peachtree.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
You mean
The big part right up there.
Pedestrian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if Mal, are y'all going to talk about pedestrian crossings?
Yes, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll get that done.
And then we really wanted to understand how this all gets connected to a system of open space and public space. And, you know, this is part of the MARTA property, and that will be turned over to some type of park and green space. But right now, we're envisioning dog park, trail, trail. We're envisioning trail.
We killed that last week.
Okay. I wasn't really concerned about that. Walking paths that then you connect to Fernwood Park. But really, you know, what starts to create the heart space is this linkage between the Transit Plaza or the Peachtree Side Park and the Town Green, which is on the back. And we start to see this as, you know, that front piece is really about animation and movement, people moving through, getting to MARTA, their office buildings. And then this Town Green is more about a community gathering space, and really where you would go to experience the day-to-day of living and relaxing and dining and all of those things. And we have, you know, we have these green dots, and we call it public space, but, and Gary and I have talked about this, we envision that as some type of iconic sculptural element in the landscape. We're working through what that is currently, but it has to be an identifier that says you've arrived at Brookhaven. And so within these spaces, you start to get these elements that let people understand, let them know this is the heart of Brookhaven, you've arrived. So they're gateway elements that announce you have arrived.
I mean, they are, as Nicole said, they are public space. It's part of the public park. But they're very small, and they're kind of hard to program. You're not going to have yoga class out there. You're not going to have, you know, movie night out there, those kind of things. So the question, so does it become more of an iconic gateway element to the community, or what? That's the type of thing that we're trying to work with.
Yeah, exactly what that means. But one of the things that was loud and clear, and it's nice to see in the survey it highlighted, was that this need for a public gathering space, a community space, more parks and more open space. And really, you know, LCI talked about this special focal spot, this being the heart of Brookhaven. And I think this, and that's what we're hoping these spaces can become, and become a symbol of. So I'm going to just take a minute to clarify that and feel free to jump in if you want, if you feel like it. Part of why we're going for rezoning, well, the reason we're doing for rezoning is that the underlying zoning does not support currently the Peachtree overlay zone, the Brookhaven Peachtree overlay zoning. That is why we are going for rezoning. The current zoning has industrial, commercial, RM75 and R75, which essentially gives you about 30 units, 400,000 square feet of office, and I think like 50,000 or 30,000, have the numbers, 30 to 50,000 square feet of retail. And it's quite a bit of parking associated with that. But if you were to read the Brookhaven Peachtree overlay guidelines and in the zoning, it does not support anything that was suggested in there. So we are going for rezoning so we could actually build to the spirit of the Brookhaven Peachtree overlay. I don't know if there's anything else to say.
No, that was one of the questions from last week, and also in some of the follow-ups that, why are you doing it? And I guess there was some broader community. Are you going for a bunch more density? What are you up to? And so actually next week as well, we'll do a better job of explaining kind of why we're having to go through all this.
And it's interesting because with the overlay, it allows for more density than what we've actually programmed for.
Yeah, we've reduced it. Our original plan was right there at it, other than the multifamily count. And then we've pulled that back. Great. Fantastic.
And do you know if you're going to have any variance requests in the project?
It seems like there were 2 or 3
There may be
things.
one.
We were trying to avoid it because of the process in the city of Brookhaven. They don't run parallel. So we're still going to try to avoid that. But okay.
So there's going to, not to spend a lot of time because I know you all went through the plan yesterday, but just last week, a quick recap of where we were back in May and where we are today. We reduced by about 140 units, I believe, and we are almost 118,000 square feet less in office, and we have upped our neighborhood serving retail and restaurant, and we've added the hotel.
Well, the hotel's there, but we reduced the key count to 125.
Oh, what was it?
This one we had 2.
It was 150. Okay. 125 now. And then the for sale obviously is now over on the right, with a huge part of the southern part.
Yeah, the next one.
And you opened up the kind of barriers to the street a lot.
Yeah, we punched more. It's a lot more porous now than it was.
Yeah, so that's, down here we've offered more housing diversity, more products, we've made a more porous edge, we've created more comfortability, and we've added more.
Scale is dropped.
Yeah, scale is dropped.
The market concept we're really excited about, and so the end capital part, we're hoping to do something pretty cool there.
Are the condos prices going to be in phase 1?
They'll come when they take more time, but they're probably phase 2. We've got it earmarked as a phase 2 because we're not going to be able to sell stuff until the first phase is clean. It's very difficult to sell high-end product when it's a construction zone next door. So they're probably a phase 2.
Yes, phase 1 centers around the town green. That's about 340 units, about 40,000 square feet of neighborhood serving retail, and about 3/4 acres of public space that we're giving back.
Do you have some idea of the price range on the condos, or have you mentioned?
We don't. I mean,
you
just
said
by
high end.
default, they're going to be
And so
pretty expensive.
what high end is.
But we have not even started programming because we've just introduced that whole concept. Also, the way we're structuring this now, the senior housing block, we're going to use for staging to get through phase 1. We're going to need some temporary parking for MARTA. We're going to be going into design and programming for the for sale product, and then we're going to be in pre-sale on the office building, and it can go as fast as we get that done. Does that make sense? So, but yeah, it's a little bit of a Rubik's Cube, and to Nicolia's point, you can see the geometry is unbelievably tough on this site. On the Peachtree frontage where the hotel is, you can't really get much building. The geometry is very tough. So we've been fighting that battle, and then you can see how it pinches down on the southern end on the other side as well. So the scale will drop, and we're just do some different things.
Well, what parking is on the west part of the site?
I'm sorry.
Is it parking on the west part of the site? You know, for the
Parking?
office? Yeah. Or for the
One of the
hotel?
big issues from the plan we were showing was the parking was visible on Peachtree. And so there is no parking garage visible in this plan from Peachtree. And to pull that off, we got to give MARTA a lot of credit. They had to agree to let us rejigger how they were getting parked, how office was going to get parked. And I won't bore you, we don't have time today, but I'm happy to show you the full download of the parking complexity of this site. It's a beating. So we were able to get that figured out. So even with the hotel, that's parking below. It's the only building that'll probably be able to afford to go below.
Are the hotel driveways coming off of Peachtree?
I'm sorry?
Are the hotel driveways coming off of Peachtree?
Well, I don't want to. There'll be an entry point where there's a drop that's next to the transit plaza, and there'll be another one probably in the back. Yeah. We're contemplating kind of 2 points. But the entrance, the only entrance that comes in right turn off of Peachtree, where it says office, would have a drop at the hotel, some ground floor retail at that ground floor, as well as ground floor in the office that are energizing that public plaza.
So the bus driveway that's there on Northwood Hills today is outbound only. We're proposing to convert a section of that to allow traffic from this west side of the site to go right in, right out.
So we're working on all that ingress right now. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Nicole. That's awesome. Any questions on that? You know, it might make sense, Gary, for you to go ahead and we just dive right into the public spaces because this all ties together, and then we can talk about, you start letting y'all fire away. We'll go from there to architectural concepts. We've still got work to do on elevations, but we're making progress. So, and clearly, even after our zoning application, we're probably going to be fiddling with that. I mean, the zoning process is fairly long, so there's going to take time to. Gary, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's quite right. Good evening, welcome. For those of you who I've not met last week, my name is Gary. I'm a landscape architect and public space planner. And it's projects like this that I love being a landscape architect, because MARTA says public space is the most important thing about this project. So I am the most important guy in the room at the moment. You know, I heard it from MARTA. Most important thing that they from the survey was public space. Anyway, so we're going to just do a real quick recap of what we talked about last week. We truly believe that the public realm is going to be one of the most important success drivers for this project. We have a good mix of building uses and a good mix of land uses, but you know, the public realm, the town center, and those kind of things that where we spend our time outside of our apartments and outside our office is really going to help drive this project to great success. So we've always believed that the town, this is essentially going to become the town green for the community. As Nicolia had mentioned, we have the plaza at Peachtree, which we'll talk about in a moment. That's access and moving through and the kind of the visibility profile for this community from Peachtree. And then the real synergy and activities that will happen, the core of the community will be in this park here, which is approximately 3/4 of an acre. There's about 15,000 square feet of lawn space here, so that we could have movie night and yoga classes and you know whatever else. You can throw a frisbee and kick a soccer ball with your kids if you want, and have some great times with it. But this is going to be the heart of the community, we believe. It's a very flexible space. We do have retail on both sides of it. It's a space that will be shared with automobiles and food trucks, very highly pedestrian oriented. It can easily be closed off for special events and activities. And so this is where the art festival will happen and all kinds of great opportunities. We believe there's potentially, you know, a small fountain for interactivity and play and noise, kind of mask some of the noise from the tracks and from Peachtree. We believe there's public art. We believe there's lots of shade. We believe there's great movable furniture, movable pieces that can be moved around. In February, you're going to move your chair out to the sun and catch it, you know, when it's nice outside, and come, it's mid-June, you're going to move your chair back into the shade, you know, so which provides that great flexibility. Next. So one of the successes will be the details of this project. And that's something that we're starting to work into now in terms of how do we create place? How do we create Brookhaven? How do we create this town center? And the quality of the details, the quality of design, and the materials that we choose, and how we lay those things out will really start to make a difference in how this project will be successful. Lots of fixed seating, lots of movable seating, specialty paving, umbrellas and chairs and shade and those kind of things, a lot of common space that is easily used. Again, we think that this is going to be a very active space. We have retail along the park frontage that will activate the space. And having access for the retailers and for the restaurants and cafes to spill out into the elements and have a good time.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
And these images are great, but one thing I don't see in them is vehicles. And so I'm wondering, why is the default this is fine
Okay,
here.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Why is the default that vehicles would be allowed, but we could prohibit them, as opposed to prohibiting them and then finding a way if service vehicles have to come in the early hours or something?
Sure. Well, as if you do lots of retail studies and restaurant studies and all those kind of things in planning, vehicles really help. Having access for vehicles really starts to help drive success in those restaurants and those shops. If I'm a retailer, I want to be able to have parking in front of my space, have shoppers come nearby. But we're just a very card-oriented society, unfortunately. And so that's how these spaces will tend to operate. Now, what the hours of operation are going to be, we don't know yet. And we do have to provide services and deliveries for these kind of things. These things could be open for 2 or 3 hours a day for vehicles, or could be open for 6 or 8 hours a day, and the rest of the time it's closed, or vice versa.
Would that be like the City of Brookhaven decision or MARTA project decision?
I would think it's...
No.
No? Okay.
That'd be a no. It would be a joint thing, but it'd be...
It's a private, it's a privately owned street. I would just add, we're dealing with this issue at all of our TOD projects, and from MARTA's perspective, it's tough. We want to restrict the use of automobiles
Exactly.
in our TOD projects as much as possible.
You don't want them driving to the restaurant.
Right, it's a little bit counter to what we're trying to accomplish with these projects, but in order for these retailers to be successful, they have to have parking. This is Atlanta, this is the situation today. We have the ability to change it over time if necessary, but if we want to be able to attract good retailers and we want them to be successful, there has to be a hint of parking. There has to be a hint of parking, but it's flexible so that we can shut it down for festivals or big events or anything like that.
Maybe for just a little more clarification, it's designed, and I think, Gary, you can show it better, but it's not designed to look or feel like a street, like you're going through town, but there's no curves. And
So this is a shared street, what they call a shared street.
It's more plaza-like, and so it just flows. And so if you're going to do an event, you can close it so that you're really using all the way to the edge of the retailer sidewalks, if you will. But on just a day-to-day basis, folks can run a lap. But the bulk of the parking's in the garage, on the first floor of the garages. And then, as you said, service.
So the concept is a shared street, which has been done in different parts of the country, different parts of Europe. That essentially, like Art has said, there's no curb. Essentially, it's a pedestrian plaza. And because there's no curb, because there's no lane markers and those kind of things, you are forced to eye contact with pedestrians. You're forced to eye contact as a walker with the driver to see who's maneuvering who's maneuvering where. So it sounds a little chaotic, but once you're in this space, it really creates a sense of order.
Yeah.
Because when we walk around downtown now, it's almost an obligatory process. We cross when the light says cross. We don't look at the drivers at the stoplight unless someone's trying to make a right-hand turn in front of us. And the cars go when things turn green. Here, you got to pay attention to what's around you. You need to pay attention to who's around you. And so speed limit on these kind of things are usually 5, 6, 3 miles an hour. And you creep around.
One last point on that is this road's not servicing any garage entrances or anything. So it's not like you got to have it to get down to a big old parking garage. It's really just
for that retail.
Lap around.
And is parking striped, or is it just?
Nope.
We
can stripe it. We have specialty paving. We can do a special paver slightly off color, so it looks like a stripe.
It'll get
Or we could have-
delineated.
Yeah, or we could have
And handicap too.
right. We could have wheel stops that will help delineate that space.
Do you anticipate ballet operations happening in there?
Potentially, yeah. Yes, yes.
It's real. I experienced it, I can't remember, in Spain or Italy or something, and it's really amazing how it works. I mean, you just kind of all maneuver around each other. And then now with like aging parents, I can envision being able to drop them and go park, or
Sure.
if you're picking up something you've purchased, being able to run in. I can see why retailers would want at least some flexibility.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah.
Right. Even if it's just one or two cars.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
One last point, where I went to college, we utilized this on both of our campuses in all parts. And I mean, if you do this with drunk college kids,
That's a good point.
Will there
That doesn't happen in Oglethorpe, does it? No.
Gary, will there be
No.
bike racks?
Sure. Yes. Oh, yeah. There'll be bike racks all through this as a true multimodal. As I think near MARTA entrances, we may have bike racks. We may have bike lockers. You know, there's lots of things. We may have a bike shop that has temporary bike storage.
Will there be public restrooms?
Don't
No.
know.
No.
Don't know.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have to think about
out there.
it. Not probably just standalone.
porta potties.
I mean, it's if you go to Krog Street Market, there's restrooms there, and you can just wander in and use it. You don't have to. It's not like a restaurant where you're walking in, buying something, and having to go use the restroom. Your only customers can use restrooms. So, I mean, in the market down here, I suspect that will probably operate the same kind of way.
We don't know. We'll figure. We'll have to.
Yeah,
it's a good
like
point.
those movie nights you're talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
Sure,
The
yeah.
way it's done in a lot of places is they bring in. They're pretty fancy nowadays, but it actually stays on the truck. They don't unload them.
Right.
But it's a good point. We need to probably explore that more.
Right.
How will maintenance and deliveries be done for the retail and restaurants? Would this service and be time restricted to the early morning times?
It would need to be time restricted. I mean, because most restaurants have had time restriction anyway, because I don't want a delivery truck showing up at 12:30. So if you're delivering to my restaurant, you need to be here by 9, period, and you're out the door. So those kind of things have to happen. Yes. Yes.
So for the sake of time, you want to go ahead and just.
Yeah, we'll keep on going. I think we're about done. I think the next slide talks about. We talk about the MARTA. Yes, the MARTA Plaza, real quick. As Nicolia mentioned, this is kind of it is public space. It is a park. It can be a park, but it's really kind of the gateway. This is the visual gateway from Peachtree as people travel, through the community. We have a lot of passer-throughers coming through, and here's an opportunity to announce the entry to MARTA, and also to announce that there is something special happening in Brookhaven here. And then on the next slide we talk about how we move, with Peachtree up here, how people would move through this plaza. We have the ramp system that brings us down to grade to the MARTA entry down here, and it's a very flexible space. It's certainly not as large as the town green space, but it is a flexible space. We could have smaller classes up here, smaller gatherings, smaller food truck events, and those kind of things. But it really becomes a different type of space, but it's still extremely usable.
Can you kind of walk through that in a little more detail? I can't. It's a confusing drawing to get it.
Talk about elevations from Peachtree.
Yeah, this is the proposed office location. The hotel that we talked about is over here. This is Peachtree with the coming in from Peachtree. There is a grade change from Peachtree to this level of about 6 feet, right? So the idea is that this upper plaza, this would be an upper plaza that would be at Peachtree level, essentially. And then you can walk along Peachtree and enter the plaza from these two locations, from in front of the hotel or in front of the office. You could access the office here, or you could come down the stairs to the MARTA tunnel, so the stairs right here, or you could use the ramp which comes through and eventually to the MARTA. There's also another set of stairs here. So we're trying to make up a 6-foot change in elevation. But essentially that line we've drawn that line right off through there.
And I think it's important to note that it's not 6 feet from that line to what's right on the other side. There is about a 2% slope once you hit the ramp, so it's gradual. It's not 6 feet up, boom, down. a 2% slope to the front yard. So you won't notice the grade changing significantly.
What are those zigzags in the middle?
Right here,
Yes.
those are festoon lighting, festival lighting.
And then the part that is on the bottom that's sort of a Star Trek looking.
Oh, this?
Yes.
It does look like that. It's on purpose.
Now it does.
It's ground art. No, it's especially it's paving. It's a paving pattern because one of the things as designers, one of the things we always like to think about is Art's office when he's up here on the 8th floor looking down. He's got to look at something good. So it's just a paving pattern, correct? And certainly this will change over time.
The fair gates are all that you want to show all along that edge are the existing MARTA fair boxes and turnstiles and stuff like that.
What's the yellow?
The yellow is an umbrella.
Whose umbrella?
Well, we're going
opposed to the umbrella.
What's that?
We're opposed to the
You're opposed to the umbrella? Okay.
I think we got it.
No more rain.
Just a quick question, the slope and grade as stated, does it conform with the specifications and the standards of the ADA?
It will, yes. Yes. That's the ramp.
It'll be the ADA.
Right.
Plus, I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think part of the concept too is there's knee walls going along there, and so you have a lot of places to just sit, waiting for the train or waiting to get picked up. There's a lot of informal places that you can sit and then kind of cascade up the hill.
Last week you said something about food trucks. We have two what appear to be food trucks there. If there's a gradual change down from Peachtree and you have stairs, the truck's not going to get on the ramp.
No,
how do they get there?
They're coming in this way.
It's actually a camping ground.
That's the That's right.
Yeah, this is the existing entrance that's there. So there's be the hotel drop off. So they would come in that way.
We're gonna have to retool.
Put a water feature in for swimming baths.
All right.
Other questions? Great.
So before we jump into architecture, is there any just global questions about the plan?
The layout of public space.
And how we're working with the geometry we have to work with it. There actually is a lot more porosity and pedestrian passageways than you would think. So we're working with a long, thin site, split into two halves. So that's the challenge.
The one that you showed on Peachtree had a row of trees, and then you had the plaza. That front part of the plaza, is that the sidewalk that's going to be along Peachtree? There won't be a secondary sidewalk on the rear.
Anything else? Okay. Daniel, we've got maybe a little more advancement from what you saw last week. People Carey is doing yeoman's work, so I want to thank them. And Kimberly Horn, just a little advertising, but to get all this done in these short snippets of time, they're doing a lot of stuff, so appreciate it.
Well, I'm Daniel Sweeney. I'm a project architect with Cooper Carey. And as you've seen, it's taken a very long and arduous process to get the zoning in play and the master plan going. And we, in architecture, are still very juvenile. We have just started in the last few weeks. So I solicit in every opinion, all opinions, as we move forward. But I'd like to start here at the top of the drawing. Last week we heard, some negative comments concerning the office tower. So we took a pause and we were looking at redefining what the architecture is at the office, the hotel, and the transit plaza, and making sure those three items really do work in concert. So you haven't or won't see any advancement today in that area, as our team is going to start revisiting that process.
So the office building is not the office building.
Right. This is just
the office building's on the facade.
It's a placeholder, but we recognize that there is a need and a desire to have a signature building on Peachtree Street that really does identify Brookhaven as a neighborhood. That when you reach it, we recognize that north corridor is a very prominent view, and you want it to be, the gateway into your community. And I guess a basic glass building isn't going to cut it, so we're going to look to do something a little bit more iconic. Also, you can see from this aerial how we're trying to break up those blocks from an architectural standpoint, that they do read as several buildings, not one major building. So to give you a lay of the land, Dresden's here, North Druid is behind me, and then of course this is the public green, and then our market concept building here at the.
What is the road?
This is Apple Valley.
So
it's Apple Valley.
Across the way.
Yeah.
On the other side.
So this would be, for example, someone's view from their balcony looking into the public green. This again is that Fernwood Market or that market concept building with the apartments behind. You can see some food trucks and some of that other retail language starting to populate the activity in the park. This would be your view if you exit the tunnel. What we're trying to look at doing is when you communicate from the parking garage, into the MARTA tunnel and into the MARTA station, that you are crossing over the thresholds of restaurants, coffee bars, patios, and all that stuff that we like to see on the sidewalk. And further articulate that with some activity above with, maybe gracious patios, people, in the rented units above looking down and, adding to that language and that activity. So we're pulling back. Now we're on Apple Valley. You can kind of now start to see that we're having a varied language of architecture. We're trying to mix some of the modern and the contemporary with that of the traditional. Again, we still have an industrial styled food hall with a signature chef-driven concept restaurant. A food hall that would be very permeable, have open garage doors so that activity from Apple Valley could spill through the project and out into the park so that that line gets blurred on a weekend. We have heard that some of this traditional language is not exactly desired, so we're also revisiting that, and you might see in different iterations a lot of that being calmed down. Again, we're just working down Apple Valley.
What is the road running into Apple Valley?
This is the new road here is the one that is planned in our master plan. So this is the private road that goes into the public green.
Will that come off Peach Street?
That will come off Apple Valley and into the plaza. Again, we're trying to create a more contemporary language of architecture that does kind of resemble some of the stuff that you'd be familiar with at Oglethorpe, but still looks like it belongs on Dresden. We also heard, you'll notice in the corner park that we didn't necessarily want to have it a one-story active use. The front's the garage, so we've gone and replaced it with some live-work units marching up the street. So you'll have work below, residents above, and to further disguise, we're just showing an occupied patio on the third floor. We're still designing for a green wall, in some regards, still disguising the rest of the garage.
Is that the turn-in from Dresden to Apple Valley?
Yes.
Are you guys going to do something so I don't have to back up every time a MARTA bus wants to take that turn while I wait for the light?
I will hold that for traffic.
Yeah, it makes it real fun when we got four of us backing up.
I'm just here to make
That's
it
a good Rob question.
the next one. And here, of course, is our illustrator's idea of what the space could feel like when it's a mature product.
Again, that's Apple Valley, Chris.
Right. So this is the entrance to Apple Valley. We're here on Dresden.
One of the observations I've made in Atlanta are that the patios, the overhang patios, are quite small, and you might get a 2-foot diameter table and 2 lawn chairs out there and nothing else.
Well,
why is that where places like Vancouver, you actually have almost a room out there that has a standard patio table and seating for 4 or 6 or whatever?
Yeah.
It's got to be cantilever. Yeah.
It's a more temperate climate.
But people spend more time on their patios if you have an apartment and overseeing what's going on.
Part of that often is the zoning. Because I run into this, we're working on a project down in Tampa right now, and the Tampa code says you cannot have a balcony that extends any more than 4 feet from the face of the building. So unless I build my balcony into the apartment partially, I'm stuck with a 4-foot. And they also say that if I can't extend it to the right of way, overhang the right of way.
Right.
So if my building is 3 feet from the right of way, I get a 3-foot balcony to my back. So sometimes it falls down to zoning.
We're looking at different balcony alternatives there, Joe. We've done 5 before. We've done 4.
They won't be small. We'll need to get a wheelchair with wheelchair turning radius, so they'll be large enough.
And sometimes it's a difference between for rent and for sale. Sometimes on those balconies. And Vancouver's mostly a for sale.
down and do that.
All right,
So are you anticipating doing anything over, like, on the actual platform of the tracks? I know, Marta, you think your tracks are really sexy, but is there anything like canopied up there or anything to make the tracks themselves and the platform up at the top that you can then draw visually?
We don't have anything planned right now as far as like major capital improvements like that. But we would be open to some sort of aesthetic improvement, like a mural or something like that. Where we just finished one at the King Memorial Station, so that's something we could certainly take into consideration here, and it would be, I think, relatively easy execution if that's what the community wanted to see.
So you're saying, not to give you a hard time, but you're saying no capital improvements to the
No major improvements of that scale. Actually, in preparation for our meeting next week, we're going to get a list of the projects that are scheduled at the station, but a lot of them are functional improvements, not necessarily aesthetic improvements. That's really the primary focus, just to make the station more comfortable, work better.
Well, I mean, in the Western Sun, because I actually take this train station. It beats on you when it's setting, so it makes it. I mean, part of the quarter-mile walk has to do with heat, perspiration.
Right. Sure.
It's horrible wind.
True. Yeah, windy. You have different elements, some kind of shaded screen elements, and some things that visually break it up. I think would be
one thing that
would be inexpensive for MARTA as well as beneficial to the
So I
riders.
think we take that into consideration. Yeah, everything we do is expensive.
One other point of information is they do have capital funding to put in elevators and escalators.
Okay, good.
Okay, so that's why this is here, because what we were thinking in our original concept was that they've got funds for that, but we could probably add on to it to create more of a visual cue that's, you can see people going up and down and it's clear. We haven't figured this out yet, but then do some kind of visual signage that's interesting. There were some comments about neon and that kind of thing, but it wouldn't be something that's going to be beating into the neighborhoods. But we got to figure out some kind of cool visual cue signage, but also dramatic visual cue here coming up and around. And we're working on all that right now.
So I was actually reacting to it more from the backside.
Oh, the backside.
Yeah, I like the vertical element there.
Oh, cool.
The image that got me thinking about it was...
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That one.
Yeah.
We have
You got
considered,
this great space, and then...
And then there's that.
Yeah.
Well, I can't speak for MARTA, it's not, but that entry that goes in on that side, that's pretty easy to just tear off. We were, I'm talking about that kind of goofy, fake kind of a thing. So we were probably figuring we would offer to rip that off and put something else up there, a little more cool, a little more of a visual, and also to introduce some green planting. Where's Gary?
we understand we'll need a backdrop here, either architectural or from landscape.
Yeah, so have some kind of something going on, tearing up the freight tracks, and then a lot better visual cue going into that tunnel.
Could some of that be like scheduled? Like when's the next train going to be at the station?
Maybe.
You have 5 minutes to make it.
It's probably electronic, but yeah, that's kind of, I like that.
We're actually doing that in some of our other TODs where we have, I was going to mention it earlier, but in the green space areas and the plazas, we can easily have a display board where it explains, hey, the next train is in 5-10 minutes, so you can grab your coffee and then head over to the station. It allows you to plan accordingly for those types of things.
But it could be not flat. You know how they do it in New York? That's kind of arced and it's flowing around. It could be something kind of cool.
Yeah, so you get it from 2 different angles.
Yeah, you can see it.
Well, we think that would maybe pay for a canopy that'll fit the station to the architecture that's surrounding it versus sticking out like a sore thumb.
Well, we specifically instructed our development partners not to touch the station because it really complicates things. So it's something that we really will need to take on if anything is done to the station.
And in fairness, there are a lot of complicated issues when you're running a train. Clearly, security is a major thing, but they've got a lot of things to think about. So we kind of protected that zone. All right.
Have you thought about trying to connect the MARTA area, the Brookhaven Park area?
It's across the street.
The city of Brookhaven has, part of their bicycle and pedestrian master plan, has two recommendations. One is to build a 5-foot sidewalk or to build a 12-foot wide sidewalk from the MARTA station to Brookhaven Park.
Okay, so any more questions?
Well, just one thing. I know there's absolutely no way this will happen, but since I'm a huge actual fan of Amtrak, and I've been all around the country by Amtrak, and anybody else who's ridden Amtrak would probably agree that we've got one of the worst Amtrak stations in the country. For many reasons, I would so love to see, and I know it can't happen, a way to marriage Amtrak at the Brookhaven MARTA, since obviously the train comes right through there.
We have started to have conversations with Amtrak about the relocation of their Atlanta station. There are a couple of challenging issues. One, they won't pay for it. They pay $1 a year at their station in Atlanta. Two, they like an Atlanta address. They like to be in the city of Atlanta proper for their Atlanta station. Three, this is a pretty active line right here, and there aren't any spurs from which the train could pull off, so you would have to create more space on a very tight site to service that train so it wouldn't hold up the traffic. So there are some pretty significant issues. We've talked to them about Doraville, and those are all the issues that they've raised on Doraville. I think it's more likely there, but still a challenge.
About the train, any discussions with the railroad about adding a third pair of tracks in this area? The bridge at Lenox Square is designed for 2 or 3 pairs of tracks. That's their money making.
We haven't had many discussions with the railroads about this site. We're trying not to unnecessarily challenging
Believe me,
them.
I'd rather go to the dentist and talk to the railroad. I'd rather go in for surgery than go. You got it.
It's awful.
Yes, ma'am.
When will we have a sewer study?
Here's the sewer story. We have been working hard with Kimley Horn team, working on with the county, and we're really working at the county's pace. And it's really, I'm just going to tell you, it's a challenge. I mean, the folks at the county, in fairness, that are in that department are doing what they can, but we're still trying to get our arms around exactly what's going on. We're hoping to by next week's meeting to have a little more color on it, but.
Yeah, because I think we've got a lot of overflow when we have heavy rains. And
we have some good news. Well, I don't know if it's good news. It's bad news for us. But this project, our estimate right now, based on the size of just phase 1, would be $1.5 million of sewer tap fees off our development. So the county. It gives a lot of incentive, I would think, to do a lot of retrofit because there's a lot of issues in Brookhaven. It's not just ours. I mean, and we have the ability to figure out how to get to the right trunk lines and stuff.
What if they don't exist?
No, they do. Yeah, we've got that much information.
Okay.
They do. They've got big 15-inch trunks, but the lines that are coming down and feeding to them are undersized. So that's what we're working through right now. And we're hoping we have more information about it. But it's not, believe me, it's not us. It's not MARTA. It's not the city of Brookhaven. We're working with the process through the DeKalb County.
Regarding stormwater, though, you are decreasing the amount of impervious surface.
That's what it appears right now from our engineers, is that because it's all asphalt parking lot, we're going to actually improve that. We'll have more pervious coverage than is there today. And then we're going to be filtering on site. So we're actually going to be
1,500 more potties.
Oh no, that's sewer. That's sewer. That's not stormwater. I hope. Kimley Horn, we'll be talking to them if that happens. All righty. So we've got. What do we got?
20 minutes left.
We got 20 minutes. So we do. Rob's here, Mallory's here from Kimley Horn. You had asked last week if we couldn't get a little more information about exactly what our development, its true impact is, because if in fact it's really not the gorilla in the room, it's not the big issue, you wanted to know that. And so that was something that you brought up. Also, we showed some pretty clinical drawings last week, but how is the bike and ped woven into what we're talking about doing on Peachtree for people safely getting across, bikes and pedestrians? And so those were all fair questions. So maybe Rob can put a little more color.
Sure, and I think Nicolia covered a lot of the longer range bike and pedestrian things that are connecting into the site. We'll drill down into some of the detail. I do want to say, I have to remind myself every time, this is still a draft, and we went and had all these public meetings. We heard a lot of input, and Gary, I know you said that you're the most popular person in the room because of the park, but I have to say I heard a lot about traffic.
He's the least favorite.
Yeah.
I'm at the bottom.
Sorry.
But we're in this process. We took all of that information and we looked at a whole lot of different alternatives, different things, different ways to do these to improve the traffic in the area. We looked at we look at existing conditions, what it is today. We look at the future when this project will be built out, and then we look at we look at an interim in there, that future year without the project itself. And so what we found, just as a quick summary, when you fix the existing and the future conditions without this project, and when you do improvements to make those things work, then when you add this project on top of that, then the traffic still works. Okay, so long story short, we've taken a lot of information. This is our best stab at what we think is the best thing to do here. We understand that we're not working in a silo. So we have to, we share this with everybody. We share this with GDOT. Peachtree is a very vital road in Brookhaven and beyond. And so we have to work with a lot of partners to make these things happen. So they have a lot of questions. They will have a lot of questions. There are going to be a lot of details to work out as we go through this process. So we're actually in the process of removing draft from everything and making it final, so we can present our final findings. We still think this is where we're going, but we're going to be put to the ringer with a lot of stakeholders as they review that traffic study, and then we'll get into a lot of the detailed design questions.
When will the draft traffic study be available for the public?
Probably within about 2 weeks.
It's probably going to match up with our submission for zoning, 1st of July.
May not want to take draft off of it, because there'll probably be comments and adjustments to your final.
Well, you're talking about for the DRI.
But there's
and the site itself.
There's always that. There's always that, and we understand that.
A lot of people see final and they think it's etched in concrete.
Right.
A living document that needs adjustment.
Right. Okay. So, and I'm sorry I missed last week, but this is the existing conditions today at Peachtree and North Druid Hills. Next is what we're proposing, and this is us. This is intended to be cartoony because there's a lot of details of the road and the right-of-way width and the details that we don't know yet, and we haven't talked with our stakeholders, GDOT, city, in detail about the traffic, and so we don't want these to look final. But when we do these improvements, when we talk about these, we're always this is a TOD. This is a project around a transit station. So the pedestrian and bikes and crossing these roads and these vehicles is always high on our mind, and making sure that we do accommodate those. The main thing here at Peachtree and North Druid Hills is adding a second southbound left turn lane. And when we do that, we create a shadow of one of those left turn lanes on the south side of the intersection, which is a great place to put a median to have a pedestrian refuge that could be beautified, replanted. We heard a lot of comments about possibly bringing the Buckhead concept of that median and putting it up here as well, which we think is a great idea. And so one thing that's not shown here is, this is a lot of lanes. These are a lot of wide lanes. One of the things that we're trying to talk with GDOT about is narrowing these lanes. And we talked about variances before. Narrowing these lanes would be a variance with GDOT. And so we have to go to GDOT and ask some things because we do want to make these things better. If we can get narrower lanes, I think we can fit in a median here to extend them along between Druid Hills and Dresden.
Question.
What do you need to take them to get that? What would?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same things. Like we said, wide lanes. What do we have out there is wide.
So today we haven't run across here because we didn't want to run across this section of the road. we ran across up on the north of Dresden. Dresden, where it's straight, is 75 feet from the face of curb to the face of curb. And so there are 6 lanes today on Peachtree north of Dresden.
12-foot lanes.
75 feet. And 2 feet of that on each side is a gutter pan for the water to drain out. And so in a lot of places in Atlanta, you see the gutter pan paved, and that's part of a lane. That might be something that we could do to help us include things like a median in the road. But again, that's something that's out of the norm for GDOT. And so it's not something that I can get up in front of you today and say, yes, we can go do that. So I'm trying to be very careful on what we're saying we can do, because there's still a lot of coordination to do.
So in theory, just in theory, when we talk about narrowing lanes on a road like this, we're going from 12 to 11, 12 to 10.
This could end up anywhere between maybe 10 and a quarter foot to 10 and 3/4 foot.
Okay.
Is 11 feet is a reasonable, is a pretty easy request of GDOT. Less than that is harder.
You're right. It's probably worth mentioning though that a lot of the lanes down Peachtree are already narrow.
Yes. Oh yes. Absolutely.
This area has never been looked at, studied, messed with.
Absolutely.
And so these lanes are way too wide and a waste.
The other thing, we know that there's the LCI project along this corridor to build multi-use path and to improve the sidewalk connectivity up and down Peachtree. And one of the other thing we've heard is a desire from the city's perspective to reduce the speed limit on Peachtree. When you get up past Dresden, it's more like a highway than a road, right? And so narrowing lanes, well, that's that would slow people down, right? And so that could be a consistent theme, and with improving the pedestrian experience with the LCI project, narrowing the lanes to fit in some lanes where we need to get some mobility for the vehicles, allow pedestrian refuges in the middle of the street. There seems to, in my perspective, there's an alignment of things that can help us get there. We need to work with GDOT to make.
So how large is a pedestrian refuge or median if you are able to get one? What's that size?
Pedestrian refuge would have to be at least 6 feet.
Okay.
The bigger the better. And sometimes you'll put push buttons in the middle so a pedestrian can go it's called two-stage pedestrian crossing. Don't know that we would do that here, but we might. It just depends on how wide we can get that.
The planters in Buckhead that we keep referring to, the planting area themselves is about 5 or 6 feet. And there's it's 6 inches, 8 inches of curb on both sides. And if you drive along those planters, you'll notice that there's a yellow line on the ground next to the planter. from yellow line to yellow line is about between 8 and 9 feet.
Wow.
But the planter itself is about 6.
So the other thing that was high on our mind when we're doing this was trying to make things that are doable and that could be done relatively quickly. There are a lot of ideas floating around of big changes that would be very impactful to right-of-way and to properties in some neighborhoods. And we were trying to keep our thoughts towards keeping it in the right-of-way. And these recommendations, the way we're proposing to do these, keeps it in the right-of-way, makes it much more doable, much faster track, because we don't impact right-of-way. We don't trigger a lot of studies and needs that could come with public funding from GDOT to do these.
Do you have any coordination of the light signals at North Druid Hills and the Total Wine Shopping Center? It looks like you've straightened that intersection up a little bit, but is the sight distance still a problem?
The sight distance is still a problem.
Can't run simultaneously.
To make that work, GDOT's looking at that right now, and they're considering it. I haven't heard the latest. When we did the study, when we were in the midst of the analysis, they were thinking probably not, and so we've assumed that wouldn't happen now. If that can happen, it's pretty easy to change some of these things in the recommendation and make it even better than what we've got. But because potentially to make that work, you may have to lower Peachtree, which is a huge.
Get that tunnel yet.
So we can go on to the next one. So that's Peachtree and North Druid Hills. Peachtree and Dresden, go ahead. And so here, Dresden, Peachtree, and y'all saw this last time. This is the main stretch where we were looking at narrowing the lanes. We could extend this down further to extend this median down. There are good locations here to fit in medians with this concept. This cross section could be carried, it could be carried all the way up to Ashford Dunwoody, because this cross section is consistent all the way up. And so when I think of this, and when I think of long term, and I think of down the road and what this road may be and what the city wants it to be, I could see pieces of median dropped in. There's basically a long left turn lane that goes for 2 miles or however far it is. But it doesn't need to be just one long lane. We can fit in a median in there as well and drop it in that area. And so with this, I think there's great potential to carry this type of thing beyond here and up Peachtree. And that's consistent with us trying to lower the speed limit. It's consistent with us trying to improve the pedestrian crossings across Peachtree. There's not many people that want to cross as you go north, but there are MARTA stops, and so we have to respect that, and we have to provide a safe place for that. So this is a concept that could be carried a very long way. But again, this is our thought. We've heard, we've listened, and this is what we're coming back with. We've got to take this to GDOT. They have to get into the nitty-gritty details of our traffic study before they'll even start to give us a firm answer on what we can do there.
There was a lot of discussion last time about that dual rate. Have you had a chance?
Great segue. Next slide.
I still see it. What is the truck percentage on Peachtree? Because that will dictate your outside lane width.
I don't know what it is off the top of my head. We've got it in our study in the counts.
Should be.
We'll have that with the data. Okay, so actually I already talked about right away and feasibility and recommendations. When we were looking at ways to make this doable and implementable in the short term. And so we have some constraints up at Dresden. So this is a picture of Dresden as it passes under the MARTA tracks. There's a column for the MARTA bridge on both sides of Dresden. This one is basically up against the back side of the sidewalk that's up on the road. This one might have a couple feet between the sidewalk and the column. When we saw this, and we saw it as not able to widen here. We heard maybe we bore through, maybe we could take a sidewalk and bore through some of the walls we have along the rail in MARTA and move the sidewalk off of the street. I like the idea of moving it off of the street, but I don't know what that does to the pedestrian environment if it's in a tunnel there along the street, and the difficulty of doing, there's fill within here, the structural dirt, so that's very complicated. Then dealing with the railroad, and that may turn it in from a short term to a long term project.
What are the width of those lanes right now? Are they 12-foot lanes right now?
I don't know what these widths are. Probably 11 or 12.
What's the distance from the back of the column to the face of the wall?
Right here, that looks like it's about 4 feet.
That's a pretty precise thing.
So when we looked at this, we felt like this was a little restrictive and not possible to do much, and we were going to be stuck with the pavement that's out there. Okay, so that's on the Dresden side. So if you go to the next slide, when you look at Peachtree, the right-of-way there, this line is actually back on the should be back on the far side of the bushes there on Waffle House, but with the patio from the restaurant, and the building comes up right up near the right-of-way. We felt like that was very restrictive. We can't go that way if we want to do anything. This way we felt was very restrictive. I was actually walking it today just to double check some things. I mean, there's a sidewalk here. Maybe it's possible to take out that sidewalk because there's no sidewalk for the rest of Peachtree. The only people who would be walking here in theory would be the Waffle House customers, and we might be able to get them out there. That's just an idea that popped into my head today. But so when we were doing our recommendations, we felt like this constraint was going to limit us from adding significant width here to make that improvement. So go back. Oh, no, this is fine. So we looked at the possibility of doing dual left turn lanes here. Okay, and so if we do the dual left turn lanes here, we have to have 2 lanes going this way on Dresden, and so we lose one of our right turn lanes that we had added. Okay, with that dual left turn lane, we can't add another northbound through because of the right-of-way constraint here. Because to add that second left turn lane, we would need I totally just lost my train of thought right there. So that space, that lane that we're building right here. So we're stuck with the right of way that we've got, that width that we've got. We would narrow the lanes to fit in the second left turn lane. So we couldn't do the other through.
What if you took out that island where your finger is right now, and that turn lane, make that the southbound left turn lane, take the median across the southern driveway to the Brookhaven Station, I think it's called, or that thing, and make them turn left into the northern end of the shopping center, the next one up, because you also have the apartment complex.
That's definitely a possibility, but we're also impacting significantly.
Medians don't impact businesses, it changes the paths, it's not a compensatory item.
I dare you to say that to them.
I'll say it's because they have access to
and so this again, this is what we heard. This is what we're bringing.
That'd be almost impossible left-hand turn there anyways, most likely today.
We're gonna go bring this and share it. Absolutely, there's potential for this to change. Yes.
If you do that, I would love to see you put a median, because I can't tell you how many times coming south on Peachtree, I come nose to nose with a car in my lane to turn into that stupid.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to encourage y'all to keep talking, keep discussing. As long as y'all can keep this team here and they're willing to stay, that's great. This is a great dialogue. I've got to go just because I've got another public meeting to go to. Y'all, this room is secured, so you're not able to go to the restroom anymore. So you're gonna have to, you have to go to the bathroom and have to leave. So in addition to Art, probably going to summarize at the end the next public meetings that y'all are going to have, and he can go over that. But as a CRB member, I really encourage you to, one of your responsibilities is to reach back out to your communities and communicate what these discussions are and the interactions that we're having, and continue to get that feedback from your communities so that we can give it to Marta and their development team, but also communicate what's going on in these meetings. I am willing, as I've always said, if any of your respective groups want to have an individual meeting where we come and talk, I certainly will be there to discuss this in greater detail. So, but please communicate back out about all the events, because we want this to be an open process. All right.
Thanks, Bates.
Y'all stick to it. Thanks much, everyone.
Thank you. So we can certainly look at that. We did look at, with that second left turn lane, the intersection still needs more improvements. And so we showed that we still need that dual right. And so there's still a constraint on Dresden as well. What we need to do is go look at that dual left with the third through. We'll look at that this week.
So one of the comments though that we did hear over and over again is that, hey, if you're adding another lane, we still need that left turn lane into the development there with Touch and Grill and all the mushroom and everything. Yes, it might be a challenge to turn left into that, but we know from the past it was just a through lane, and it was rendered unusable because people were automatically crossing over the Dresden intersection, stopping so that they could turn left.
Right.
So, we've got to look at both sides of the coin there, because there have been multiple comments saying, as long as you keep that left turn lane, because we still need to be able to drive through.
So the northbound, what she's talking about is the northbound left into all these properties. It used to be 3 lanes through, and that inside lane wasn't a left turn lane, it was a through lane, and people would have to stop in that to turn, and people would get, so they grabbed it. So that's how we ended up with these recommendations, just because we were trying to be mindful of these constraints that we saw. Yes, that's what we think is a constraint. We're still going to be talking with all our stakeholders. There's certainly possibility to do other things, but
just back to timing. An important goal is that we try to do as few things as possible that could slow this down with the state. And if we want these improvements to line up with the first phase of the TOD, you gotta let go of some short-term stuff and know that there's going to have to be long-term solutions.
Yeah, but we were kind of told out of town Brookhaven and it didn't work out.
No, that's true.
So we need to have proper solutions.
Well, no, we need to clarify. Some of the facts that were in an article were not true about what was done and not done for town.
I know, but Kinley Horn did a great job during that report, and they found that this intersection would blow up because of it. Their own numbers predicted that,
right.
And yet it got executed.
No, we're talking about making these improvements. I'm saying if you start affecting people's property rights, taking right-of-ways, you're going to add 2 years to the process. That's all I'm saying. Or more. Okay, so we got to break this thing into, in my opinion, short-term and long-term, and get those things separated, because the more we add and later on, the state's just going to take forever. and it's going to be just like it is. So, okay, anything else on traffic?
I don't think so. We got a bike trade slide, but we talked about that.
Okay. All right. So, you have a hand?
Oh yeah, we have a handout. Everybody asked for traffic volumes. So we have.
So what is the Cliff Note version of volumes? What do we actually have? That's what everybody wanted.
That's what everybody wants to start.
What is our true impact?